So last year, you guys heard me speak a little bit about my testimony, and it's a little different than what you're going to hear me speak about tonight. Tonight, I'm going to speak about my passion. Tonight, I'm going to speak about the things that God has called me to do, and not speaking about myself, but I'm speaking about somebody else. His name is Reinhard Bonnke. The great thing about what God does with people is He takes the people that the world says is insignificant, and He turns them into world changers. So, if you don't remember anything about this man named Reinhard Bonnke that was born in Germany tonight, just remember this, that God can take the one person that everybody around you says is insignificant, that will never make a difference, and that the plans that God has placed in their hearts will never happen. They're wrong. God took somebody that was called that and turned him into a world changer. So, as I have already alluded to, Reinhard Bonnke is an evangelist. He shares a passion that I have. God has called me into evangelism myself. Reinhard Bonnke was born in Germany in 1940. So as you know, if you're a historian buff, 1940 was probably not a great time to be born in Germany. So Reinhard's family, in the midst of World War II, fled to Denmark. He was actually raised in Denmark and started his early Christian life at 9 years old. He gave his heart to the Lord at the age of 9 years old, and by the age of 10 had done his first missions trip to Africa. He knew at that point that God had called him to Africa. He didn't know why, he didn't know what for, but he just felt drawn to that continent. Not a single place in particular, but as the whole country. Well, as he did his first missions trip in Africa, he seen the hunger that they had for God. He seen the passion of them wanting to feel God's presence. And he kept getting these visions of the map of Africa blood red with the blood of Christ. And so Reinhard was thinking to himself, Africa is enormous. How in the world is God going to use me to reach the entire continent of Africa and see people saved by the drones? Everybody that he was with, all the local churches that he was part of at that point in time, when Reinhard started sharing this vision with them, told him he was crazy. He said it'd never work. But Reinhard knew that God had told him to do this. And he told him, like, look, if we just shift into doing crusades on a larger scale, we're going to see more people saved. We're going to see this blood-washed Africa. And they told him, they said, people will never give their hearts to Jesus on a real level at a crusade of a massive degree. So Reinhard turned from that vision for a few years. He went and studied at the College Bible of Wales, got a degree, started the organization known as CFAN, Christ for the Nations. He struggled with this desire in his heart to continue to go back to Africa, to continue to do these crusades. As a result, in the frustration that he was feeling because of this call on his life, he went back to Africa in 1970s, or 1986 it is, and he did his first crusade. His first crusade held a whopping 100 people. This room. He said, I think it was 10 conversions at that crusade. But he didn't give up. He knew that God had called him to continue doing these crusades. So the next crusade, he said, we want to get a venue that will seat 34,000 people. So he just started believing in this thing God had placed in his heart. So he built this enormous tent that could house 34,000 people. The very next day, a windstorm came through and destroyed the tent. So he was thinking at this point, what is going on? I'm following through with this thing God has placed in my heart, but yet now my tent that I just built is destroyed. So they continued to say, hey, we're going to do this open air. And if you don't know what an open air crusade is, they build a stage, and just wherever you can fit in is where you get in. So he put it out on the local radios. He started marketing this crusade. And when people showed up, there was 10,000 people, and then 20,000 people, and then 30,000 people. His second crusade in Africa hosted 100,000 people. So he planned for 34,000 people. The tent got destroyed, and 100,000 people showed up. One man, trusting in a dream that God had given him, saw 100,000 people that day. Bonnke was no stranger to controversy, as a lot of well-known preachers and evangelists are. People try to pick him apart. He actually tried to do a crusade once in Nigeria where he was threatened with death by a population of people there that thought he was coming to come against them. It's no stranger to come against or to get friction when you're stepping out against the kingdom of darkness. Make no mind that if you are a light shining in the world, you are a target for the enemy. And Reinhard was no stranger to that. He, in his personal life, founded a Bible college and a school for evangelism after doing several crusades in Africa. And he continued his ministry, raising up generation under him to take on this ministry that he had started. In, I think it was 2017, Reinhard Bonnke held a farewell gospel crusade in Lagos, Nigeria. The very place that wanted to kill him when he had come previously years before, held one there in 2017 in which he's seen a crowd of 6 million people. He preached the gospel in the very place that tried to kill him and seen a crowd of 6 million people. To date, Reinhard Bonnke has confirmed through conversion cards at his gospel crusades. He has conversion cards so that people, when they give their life to Christ, they write down that they've dedicated their life to Christ. That way, when Reinhard Bonnke leaves that area, the local churches can follow up and start discipling these people. But as today, as of 2019, and he no longer does it since 2017, now his protege, Daniel Kalinda, took over that ministry. He has seen 75 million dedications to Christ. 75 million Africans have given their life to Christ because of one man following God's plan. I want to shift now. I've told you about Reinhard Bonnke, and we obviously couldn't get a picture to cooperate, right? Right here. This is one of his gospel crusades, and this is what 1 million people look like at a gospel crusade. You see the edge where the trailer is? They're standing on top of this semi-trailer. They're as far as the eye can see in this direction. The tents in the background are actually deliverance tents. So when people show up and they're oppressed or they're possessed, by demons, they bring them back to those tents and they pray over them. Reinhard Bonnke has gotten so much slack for these crusades that people have told him that he works for Satan. How is 1 million people listening to the message of Jesus Christ the work of Satan? Now I want to shift to you guys. God has been talking to you guys. You guys that have been at camp for a while, you know every time you come back, you encounter God in a new way. He puts new things in your heart. And then you go home and you may struggle some more. My pastor, one time when I was still very new in Christ, told me that when you go out swatting the hornet's nest, you're going to get stung. So a lot of you, I see a lot of you, and your faith is growing so much, and you're out there telling your friends about Christ, and you're starting Bible studies, and you're getting prayer in school. I want you to know that when you're doing that, you're swatting the hornet's nest. But don't be afraid to get stung, because Reinhard Bonnke wasn't afraid to get stung. And he's seen massive salvations. When I first started my walk with Christ, I had a vision of going to Africa. And I went in 2017 and preached 2 gospel crusades and seen 75 people give their hearts to God. Now I'm encouraging my kids to go to Africa with me next year. Because if I can see 75 in my lifetime, what can my daughter see in her lifetime? What can my son see in his lifetime? I'm so passionate about showing people Christ. And next year I want to try to do some humanitarian things, which doesn't matter, because all that matters really is Jesus. We talked this morning about Gideon and how Gideon trusted God and trusted the plan that God had placed in his heart. What is he placing in your heart? What is he trusting you to do? I have this image that I like to use, that some people say, well, what can a drop of water do when it hits? I mean, it's insignificant. What is one drop of water? If one drop of water drops in the middle of a pond or a lake or an ocean, what does it cause? It causes a ripple. Yes, and where does that ripple reach? Everywhere. Every single place that it's supposed to reach. It reaches every shore surrounding it. God places these plans in our hearts and wants us to trust him for these plans in our hearts, because we are that ripple. We are that effect that will reach everybody that we are supposed to reach. And I know that I was supposed to talk a lot about Reinhard, but I want you guys to get this so badly, that if you remember anything, even if you don't remember Reinhard Bonnke, remember that you guys are the world changers of the next generation. Amen. You guys are the ones that are going to show Jesus to the generations with you and after you. You guys are going to be the ones going to Africa and Asia and China and everywhere in the world, preaching the gospel to the people that need to hear it so desperately. And if you don't even go overseas, there's people right here in America that need to hear the gospel. Maybe you're called to your backyard. Maybe you're called to your school. And these things are so important that we trust God for these plans that he has in us, because if we don't follow through with them, then you're not reaching the people that you're supposed to reach. If you're not moving forward one step at a time, there's somebody out there that's not going to be reached. My pastor says sometimes that only we can slay the giant meant for us. Somebody's waiting for you to slay your Goliath so that you can move forward and lead them to Christ. Evangelism is something that America has kind of put on the back burner for a long time. But I feel this surge of it coming back, because we're so passionate with our love for Christ, and God is so passionate about pouring his love into us, and that he chases us and he never gives up on us, and he wants the people that don't feel that love that you have felt to feel that love. Just remember that one person here in America, anywhere in the world, like Reinhard Bonnke, can change the world. If he can see 75 million people saved, how many can you?